Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Monday Morning Inspirations. We are delighted to have Chris Schaeffer here with us today. She's going to be talking about Suffer, the little children, inviting children to the bedside of the dying. Allowing a child to visit with their dying loved one can help them gain perspective. It brings comfort to the dying person and helps the child understand that our bodies grow old, they grow sick, and die. It allows them to understand the importance of being in the moment, of sharing joys and making memories. So Chris, I think this is your second Inspirations. Chris is a hospice clinical nurse specialist, and she's going to share with us this morning the heartfelt moments and experiences of inviting children to the bedside of the dying. This is based on her time with a wonderful hospice family. If a child wishes to care for a dying person, allow them to do so. Allow children to participate in meaningful ways of saying goodbye. Keep their schedules and boundaries as close to normal as possible and provide affection, love, care, and supportive listening. Let children know that they are welcome to ask any of the questions they have. And so, Chris, we are really, again, delighted to have you share this important message to us. So please, I turn it over to you.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me? I can hardly hear myself because of everything. Okay. So, as people who know me know, I've been in hospice close to 30 years now. And over the years, I've met many, many special people, but one of them really made two particular situations made a big impact. And I'm hoping to share at least one of them this morning. And I was working on a weekend doing an admission. It was a Friday night, very, very late Friday night. And I come in to meet with a woman. She's 71, which is getting younger and younger the older I get. But anyway, she was a vibrant woman, and she'd had 3 strokes in 2 weeks, completely out of the blue. She had no idea what was happening. She had just gotten everything in her life ready for the perfect retirement. She had bought a beautiful home in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. She was absolutely so happy with everything in her life. It had her kids, her grandkids, everything. It was just perfect. And then she had these strokes, one after another, and she was basically she was dying. She was actively dying. So according to her advanced directives and her wishes, she did not want to be kept alive in that condition. So she wanted to go home and pass away peacefully. So by the time I get there, she was in a hospital bed in the basement, and there was a beautiful home. So it was a walkout basement so she could see nature. It was absolutely gorgeous. So I get there and I'm working with the family, and I just saw so much love and so much sorrow there. And everything was accelerated. It was like they were in hyperdrive. They had gone from the perfect world into the horrible nightmare in 3 weeks. It's actually 2 weeks. And the husband basically had not left his wife's side for 2 weeks and almost hadn't slept. So he kept falling asleep in the middle of our interview. It was really, really, really sad. So I was there. The woman was very minimally interactive. She was able to look around, but she didn't really have any control over either side of her body at that time. She was very, debilitated at that point. So when I was talking to them and I was doing all the teaching about how to turn and reposition, how to care for her, she has a sister, and her sister's nickname for her was Sister. So she actually curled up in the bed with her sister and was holding her. And it just took everything in me not to just, fall apart, because it was such a tender moment. And she was just holding her sister and telling her it was okay and how much she loved her. And it was an incredible moment. And I love it when that happens, when people feel that freedom and able to do that. And my biggest teaching was about normalizing, about allowing the noises, not that the patient doesn't want to be isolated and away from the sounds of living. And she wants to smell the foods that people are eating. She wants the social interaction. She wants to be around people. And one of my biggest things is about normalizing the room where people are dying. And that's why so often when they put a dying patient in a living room upstairs, even though it seems inconvenient for the family, at least the patient is where there's activity going on. They're not isolated. So this woman was not isolated. She was right there. There was the ping pong table, a pool table. There was an extra bedroom to the side where her husband was going to sleep. And her sister was curled up in bed with her. And I thought, this is in many ways the best thing that could happen. And then I look over onto the side, and coming down the basement stairs are two little boys wearing their little sleepers, probably 3 and 4-year-olds, and their little matching sleepers with the little feet in them. And they come running over to grandma, and they say, it's time for grandma to give us our bedtime story. And I'm thinking, how is grandma going to do a bedtime story when grandma can't lift her head? She can see and she can hear. And so they come running over, and the sister gets off of the bed, and she jumps the two little kids up onto the bed with grandma, and they're just hanging on to her and loving on her. And they say, they wanted to pick a book. And so they open up this, container, I guess, with all their favorite books. And she picked out a book, and it was a book that surprised me so much, because I'll show you which book it was. And I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. You know how these things are, limited success. So can you see this screen where the wild things are? Someone will have to, yes or no? I can't hear.
We see like a fancy ice sculpture background.
No, that's not what, you're not supposed to see that. Okay, so let's do that again. Thank you very much for saying that. I was going to have this whole conversation about, okay, here we go. Is that better? Can you see a children's book
There you
now?
go. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So they pull out this book, Well, the Wild Things Are, by Maurice Sendak. And it seemed like a very peculiar book. It's about a little boy who's having a little bit of a temper tantrum, and he gets sent to bed without his supper. And so he has this little, they start the story. And as they're going through the story, here he is, he's torturing the dog, torturing the cat. And his mother calls him and says, wild thing. And Max says, I'll eat you up. And so he was sent to bed without eating anything, sent to bed without his supper, your classic move. And his memory here he is, he's so unhappy, and his imagination takes off, and he imagines a world. And this world eventually leads him into the place where the wild things are. He gets on a boat, and he travels to where the wild things are. And what does he do with these wild things? He tames them. So they become his friends, and he becomes they start playing, and they have more and more fun as they're going through their lives. And here he is in this world where he doesn't want to be in the real world anymore. He doesn't want to be where there's discipline, when there's reality, where there's all these things. So he's in his make-believe world, and he's the king of his world. And then he sits there, and then he gets tired of them, and he tells the wild things to go to sleep. And then guess what he does? He smells supper at his house, and he smells the good things to eat. And he gave up being king of where the wild things are. And so he gets into the boat, and he says he's going to go home. And he said, and the wild things cry, oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so. And it was the weirdest thing, because I was watching this, and this whole scene was unfolding in front of me. These two little kids sitting up on their grandmother's bed, grandma very close to death. She ended up dying, I think, the next day. And they're listening to this book about a child who's trying to escape from reality, and finally realizes he needs to go back to reality. And as he's going back, they yell, that the wild things yelled, please, we'll eat you up. We love you so. And that point, I realized that even though that's not the choice of book that I would have chosen, it was incredible, because they were telling their grandmother, we'll eat you up. We love you so. And it was incredible. And as I saw that, I picked up all my belongings, and I just snuck up the stairs, because that was their moment. That was their opportunity to be with their grandmother. And we all know, and we say it all the time, that there are no accidents, and that the way things work out is incredible. But what I really loved about this was that even though that's not the way I would have orchestrated that moment, and it was clearly the right moment, it was the right book at the right time. And it was absolutely extraordinary how much that spoke to me. And as the little boy comes home, it says here, and into the night of his very own room where he found his supper waiting for him. And so as he returned back into the real world and he had to come back and face reality. And this is what this book was, so sad and it was so wonderful at the same time. So I was watching these little kids who came in, they ministered to their dying grandmother without meaning to, without even understanding they were doing it. And by normalizing and by creating this incredibly poignant moment, it was, you couldn't have made it more perfect because they had the right book at the right time with the kids jumping on grandma, and it was just a wonderful moment. So I wanted to share that because it had been very incredible to me that as hospice people, be they nurses, doctors, volunteers, chaplains, social workers, ours is not to create their moments. We have to be careful. Sometimes we can put things into place if they're having a struggling moment, but to be we're witnesses to this sacred time, and it's a very sacred, it's a very special time. So when I saw that and I realized, wow, that's not how I would have done it, but it was so uniquely hers. And then I found out she had died the next day. It was an incredible moment. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to comment on that or anything. I have one other thing about a child or a young person who is dying, but I wanted to find out if anybody had anything they wanted to share at this point.
How cognizant do you think the kids were of their grandmother's prognosis?
None. They had none. They had no idea. They just knew that grandma was here and they were with grandma, and that was the perfect place to be.
Yeah.
They were complete innocents at that point.
Just in the moment.
They were just in the moment and they jumped up on grandma, and I thought it was wonderful that no one prevented them. They just embraced the moment. They were there. And you know what, when my own father and mother were dying, my mother, she died quickly, but my father died over 3 years, and all 3 of my children were there as they watched him decline. And so when they went to and they saw him in his casket at the funeral, it was interesting because their perspective was he's no longer suffering. They had seen the process. They had seen grandpa that they knew, and then they saw grandpa declining. And it was a very natural thing to see him. It wasn't fun. I don't recommend it, but it was a very natural thing for them to see him and see that now he's at rest. He doesn't have to do that anymore. So that was an observation I had with my own children.
Thank you.
Yeah, does anybody else have anything? Okay, then the second story I have is it was a few years later, and I went into the house. It was a young person. I don't know if she was 20s or 30s, and it falls into the pediatric because we all know that when we have people who are taken from us very, very early, it is particularly sad. And I have been told, and thankfully I haven't gone through it, that the worst thing that can happen is for a parent to have to bury a child. They say it's one of the most painful things that can be imagined. And I actually spoke to a 100-year-old woman one time, and she had buried one of her children. And she says, it doesn't matter how old I am. Don't you dare think it because I'm 100 years old that it doesn't hurt, just like it would be if you lost your child. That was a moment, because I thought, oh, she's had, 70 years with her child. She goes, no. She goes, I want more years with my child. He should be burying me. I should not be burying him. So I went into this family, and she had a cancer diagnosis, and this was around right before Thanksgiving. And I know, Michael and I, since I know he's been in the field as well as I have, and you walk in, and holidays are very meaningful, and they're really, really profound. And there are times when we have a lot of patients who give up, they die because they've gone through a family gathering and they've made their peace, they let go or whatever. It's very common that we will have a lot of deaths at that time. So I went in and talked, and she had been fighting some sort of terrible cancer. And she had actually created, and hopefully I could bring this up. I'm struggling a little with the technology here. So here we go. We'll go to page width, and then I will share. Okay, so we'll call her Audra. And so she was a young lady who had decided she wanted to be an artist. And now she knew she could no longer be an artist, that she was dying. And I asked her, can you see the picture of the hummingbird? Yes. Okay, great.
Yep.
So I went in, I was talking to Audra, and I asked her, just like we are here at this company, we've just started 3 non-clinical things. Well, this other agency, we had similar kinds of questions that we asked our patients. And I said to her, I said, if you had one thing, she was completely alert and oriented and knew that her parents were just in terrible pain. Her parents had been divorced, terrible divorce, and they came together over their dying child. And they decided to come together and to make peace. And it was really sweet, actually, that they did that. So here's the daughter, and she's saying, yeah, well, I want to be an artist, but I realize I can't have this. But I said, well, what gives you joy? And she said, Christmas. Well, here we are right before Thanksgiving. So she wanted to live till Christmas. And let me tell you, this story is really, really incredible. She says, I love all things Christmas, Christmas ornaments, Christmas trees, Christmas cookies, red and white things, and candy canes. I love everything Christmas. And I talked to the family afterwards, and she was, she actually handed me this. This is actually a picture of one of her pieces of artwork. And it was a hummingbird, and she just loved this. And she handed me a set of note cards that she had made. And she was so thrilled to show me this, that this was her artwork that she had done. It was really beautiful. I actually will never look at a hummingbird the same again. It's one of my reasons I love hummingbirds, is because of this young lady. But as I was talking to the family in the front hall, I said to them, can't you make Christmas come early? And they looked at me like I was, what was I saying? And I said, can't we just bring in the Christmas tree and bring in everything and celebrate with her now? And what ended up happening in the end, and I went back to my agency and I talked to the nurses there, and I said, can we sit down and everybody write Christmas cards and send them to Audra? And we didn't do it. And I'm telling you, her family did not put up the Christmas tree. They did not have Christmas early because they didn't want to jinx it. They didn't want to have this, to hasten her death by this, which was, of course, not something that would have happened. So I wanted to tell you something, that all she wanted was Christmas. All she loved was Christmas. She wanted that Christmas tree. She wanted those gifts. She wanted to do this. And so what I'm really going to tell you is this: when you're talking to someone, remember that life is really, really short. It's getting shorter every minute. We're all getting older. And I'm just telling you, if Christmas is what she needed, we should have given her Christmas. She needed Christmas. And she wanted that joy, she wanted that color. And I just regret not having said to that family, let's pull out all the stops. Let's pass the hat and get some money together and have people come over and throw a party. This was not in the time of COVID. We could have done any of those things. And I just want to say that we have to be in the moment with our patients. We have to be able to hear what they need and what will minister to them. And it was so ironic that here I am, we're talking about this patient, about, how she wanted Christmas. We couldn't get, they chose not to do it early. And then what does she do? She turns around, she gets up, she's so weak, and she goes over and she gives me this painting. So she gave me a gift. She gave me a gift of these note cards, and she says, I want to give you something. And talk about a humbling experience. So here she is. What we needed to do is give her and surround her with whatever it is that she needed. And she was very childlike, even though she was in her 20s or 30s. She had had her childhood arrested by this cancer. She'd been struggling for years and years. And I just want to say that, when someone asks you, bring the moment forward. Bring it. If someone wants Thanksgiving 4 weeks early, do it. If they need Christmas in the middle of July, do it. Because life is really short, and we need to make those memories, and we need to help each other, and it helps us with our grieving. It's a gift we can give to the dying. It's a gift we can give to those of us who are surviving. And just some moments of tenderness with the little children. And then here was an opportunity missed. And then on top of it, she heaps this, as it were, burning coals on my head. She hands me this beautiful gift of these note cards. And so these are more reflections than lessons, but I didn't know if that had administered to anybody or if anybody wanted to share.
Well, Chris, thank you for these messages. They are important. And your first message about children and normalizing death, and how important it is. I think we have a society where, no, let's not bring the children to the funeral. No, let's not have them at bedside. It's a reminder. Death is a part of life, and children need to be a part of it. So that's the first message. And then the second message is it's never too late, right? I think we have to put our agenda aside and ask what's meaningful to somebody and honor that. And we don't have to wait till the end of their life, right? But it's important to understand what is most important to you, and how can we give that to you and put our agendas aside. At least that's what I took from this. So thank you.
And the other thing is that as hospice nurses and practitioners, if we know that we can sense from the signs and the signposts that a person is getting closer to death and they have a milestone they need to reach, let's bring the milestone up. Let's move it. Let's bring it to them, because that would have been particularly beautiful for that family, I believe.
Yeah, beautiful reminders. Open the floor. Anybody have comments, thoughts, insights, questions for Chris?
I have a comment. I absolutely, yes, I've had similar experiences. And I actually, when I wrote my own advance directives, I used the form that Minnesota uses. That's the state I'm from. And it has a section about what you want your dying environment to be. And I, from similar experience, specifically have let kids in the room, let them play, let them be loud, let them hop in the bed, like just do it, anything. I would love, if I was in the hospital or dying at home right now, I would want my nieces and nephews hopping on the bed, doing what they do. And I also love that you talked about Christmas, because I have worked Christmas every single year except last year since moving here, because I don't have kids or family here. We don't fly home for Christmas. And it is the best day of working in hospice, because you get to go in the morning. And I had one lady, and this lady was so complicated, and the family was literally like, we are just keeping her here for the day, and then she's going to the IPU tomorrow morning. And we had all agreed to it. And I get there, and there's kids opening presents, and a kitten runs across my feet because someone got a kitten for Christmas. And I was like, this is the best Christmas ever. And I love when it's normalized, because I'm from a very small town where we're related to everybody. And that's why I'm so comfortable doing this work. My earliest memories are going to funerals. My earliest memory that I know of, I was like 3, and my cousin dared me to touch my great grandma's hand in the casket. Like, that's my earliest memory. And it's just like, we went to like 4 funerals a year because we knew everybody in the town. And it was just normal part of life. And then I've seen my in-laws who have a very different family culture. And there's a lot of discomfort, and they never saw any of that until they were full adults. And it was really hard for them the first time to be a full adult and not have seen all these examples of how to handle this by adults when you're young. So I'm a huge advocate of normalizing, and I always tell the families, the kids just take the cue from you. If you make it a big deal, it's a big deal. If you just say it's normal and you act as if it's normal, they just get that it's normal, and it's fine, and it's hard, but it's okay.
Thank you,
Hi,
Melvin.
everyone. I was going to add, so in talking with patients and families about their death and how they handle it, and, especially around children, I always phrased it that it's an opportunity to teach them how they will handle death in their life, and that you're actually giving a gift to your family when you make these types of decisions. So again, it's up to the individual family, but and sometimes that's a big change in how they learn to handle death. And it can be scary for them to incorporate children because they were told, or maybe they, when were young, didn't have the opportunity to be around somebody dying. So, but so I kind of phrase it as a gift that they can give.
Thank you, Christine. Yes,
A woman who had a very supportive family had been in Gilchrist for some time and had been pretty unresponsive for 2 weeks before Christmas. And when I went in to see her, she was eyes open. She had on reindeer antlers with blinking Christmas lights. And her daughter and son-in-law and young kids came in. And she had been, I guess, reserving her strength for that day. And she was so happy. And I believe 2 days later she died. But she had a family that was very supportive, and the kids had been visiting regularly. But she just wanted that Christmas, and she got it. And the kids will take that for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
Thank you, Peter.
And I think that just to end, one of my favorite memories that I had when I used to visit on Thanksgiving, which of course you get sort of miffed and vexed when you have to leave your turkey, right? So I go out there and I'm visiting this guy, and he was in terrible pain. He had pancreatic cancer, and I was trying to help with this pain crisis. And in the middle of working with this and calling, how many pharmacies, like one pharmacy in America is open on Thanksgiving. So trying to find the one place to get the medicines. And this is back in the old days when nurses used to go and pick up medicines from the pharmacies, and very old school. And I remember turning around and I looked at the table, and they said, well, of course you're going to join us for Thanksgiving. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was such a moment, because I'm like, they're like, you came here and you gave up your time. And once again, the humbling experience of having someone say, you're giving, we're going to give back to you. It was really amazing. And it was the best Thanksgiving. So just to remember, and I just got to say it as we finish up today, is that Merry Christmas, right, everybody?
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your inspiration this morning, and giving us some gems to think about and to remind us of what's important. And thank you, everybody, for spending your morning with us. It was such a wonderful pleasure, and we wish you a very, very wonderful day and week, and look forward to seeing you next Monday. And everybody, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.